Throughout the 1930s, the Nazis confiscated books their party deemed dangerous and un-German. One title that made it onto their blacklist might surprise you: Bambi. Yes, that Bambi, the book that inspired the classic Disney movie. You may wonder why the Nazis would ban the story of a fictional deer. The obvious reason is that its author, Felix Salten, was Jewish. That alone was enough to get an author's books pulled from German shelves in the 1930s. However, the Nazis may have had another reason to hate Bambi, and they might not have even realized it. Unlike the Disney movie, Salten's book may actually be an anti-Nazi allegory that predicted the Holocaust. The book contains several scenes that are eerily reminiscent of those that would unfold in Nazi Germany. This led people like Jack Zipes, a professor emeritus of German and comparative literature, to argue that Felix Salten wrote Bambi to speak out against the persecution of the Jews. Zipes even published a new translation of Bambi in 2022 to prove it. It's a fascinating theory, and it received some attention from the press. But is it true? Let's start at the beginning. Our story begins in 1869. When a boy named Siegmund Saltzmann was born. Siegmund was Jewish, descended from a long line of rabbis. Unfortunately, he grew up in Austria during an age of violent anti-Semitism that would culminate in the Holocaust. When Siegmund was little, the Vienna Stock Exchange crashed. Austrians like politician Georg Ritter von Schörnerer blamed the crash on the Jews. Schörnerer and his followers called the Jews an alien race and wanted to, quote, eliminate Jewish influence in all fields of public life. Another politician, Karl Lueger, used anti-Semitic rhetoric to become mayor of Vienna in 1897, an office he served in until his death in 1910. Austria wasn't the only place affected by anti-Semitism. In the 1880s, the first wave of pogroms broke out in Eastern Europe. Mobs destroyed the homes and property of Jews and massacred Jewish citizens. This was the world Siegmund Saltzmann grew up in. With so much anti-Jewish hate around him, Siegmund chose to hide his Jewishness by giving himself a less Jewish name, Felix Salten. As an adult, Salten became a professional journalist, and in 1918, there was plenty to write about. World War I ended, with Germany surrendering to the Allies. German conspiracy theorists refused to believe that the Allies had simply beaten them. Instead, they accused Jews of causing their defeat and stabbing Germany in the back. In 1919, an Austrian veteran named Adolf Hitler, who was a big fan of these two guys, wrote his first anti-Jewish message, saying Germany must systematically remove the Jews. The threat of a Holocaust was now looming, and if anyone was in a position to see it coming, it was a Jewish Austrian journalist like Felix Salten. But did he? If Salten did see an ethnic cleansing on the horizon, he wasn't the only one. In 1922, another Austrian author named Hugo Bettauer published The City Without Jews, a novel from the day after tomorrow, which became a movie in 1924. In the story, the citizens of a city based on Vienna blame Jews for their problems, and a politician, based on Karl Lueger, orders all Jews to be deported. The citizens celebrate as they send the Jews away on trains. Later, they realize that deporting all Jews doesn't actually solve their problems. In fact, it's a huge drain on their city's economy and culture. Bettauer's story made the Nazis so angry that a young Nazi walked into Bettauer's office one morning in 1925 and shot him dead. Around the same time that The City Without Jews was released, Felix Salten released a book of his own. Bambi, A Life in the Woods is a 1923 adult novel about a deer named Bambi who grows up in a beautiful European forest. Life in the forest isn't peaceful though, because Bambi and his fellow animals live in constant fear of man, who invades their forest and kills their loved ones without provocation. You can probably see the metaphor already. The animals could represent Europe's persecuted Jews, and man could represent their persecutors. That's not the only way you can interpret the story, of course. There's a much more straightforward way to read Bambi, and anyone who's seen the movie will know it. It's an anti-hunting story. It's one reason that hunters strongly objected to Disney's movie. But there's a big problem with that interpretation. Felix Salten was an avid hunter. Why would he write a story to condemn it? Maybe Bambi doesn't have a message at all. Maybe it's just a simple kid's story. Except Salten never intended the book for kids. He was furious when he found out publishers were marketing Bambi books as children's books and demanded that they stop. So if the book wasn't meant to scold hunters or entertain kids, might it have been an allegory? Let's examine the text, beginning with the most infamous scene, the death of Bambi's mom. In the Disney movie, this scene is sad but tame. There are exactly 2 gunshots, 1 deer dies, and we never see a body. In the book, the scene is different. There are multiple hunters who open fire and kill many different animals. It's a massacre, almost like an animal version of a pogrom. The hunters fire on the animals, killing some, while others flee in terror. If this is just an entertaining animal story, it's an awfully grim one. A similar scene happens near the end of the book. A hunting dog chases a fox through the woods on behalf of his human master. When the dog corners the fox begs the dog to let him go. Salten writes, "The fox pleaded still more insistently. 'We're relations,' he pleaded. 'We're brothers almost. Let me go home. Let me die with my family at least. We're brothers almost, you and I.' 'No, no, no,' the dog raged. Then the fox gets angry and calls the dog a traitor. The dog responds to the fox with words that sound like they're coming from a Nazi collaborator. 'What do you want? What do you know about it? What are you talking about? Everything belongs to him, just as I do. But I love him, I worship him, I serve him. Do you think you can oppose him, poor creatures like you? He's all-powerful. He's above all of you. Aren't there many, many others on his side?' These are just two scenes from the book reminiscent of Holocaust history, but there are more. Bambi even spends days hiding from the hunter beneath a fallen tree, which in hindsight sounds a lot like a metaphor for Jews hiding from Nazis in basements. Then again, this could be the result of hindsight bias. You could read all sorts of messages into Goldilocks and the Three Bears. That doesn't mean it's a political allegory. Besides, if Salten did write Bambi to warn people against genocide, it looks like hardly anyone picked up on the message. Bambi quickly became a bestseller. A young German girl named Eva Braun grew up reading it, the same Eva Braun who'd later become Hitler's significant other. It seems unlikely that kids like Eva were reading Bambi for its political messages. It was popular overseas, too. English copies flew off the shelves of US bookstores. It started flying off the shelves in Germany, too, but for a different reason. The Gestapo seized copies of Bambi in 1936. In 1938, they added all Felix Salten's works to the official list of harmful and undesirable literature. By 1938, however, Bambi was on his way to Hollywood. An American director named Sidney Franklin bought the film rights to Bambi from Salten for a grand total of $1,000. Franklin then sold those rights to Walt Disney, who adapted it to animation and Disneyfied the story. As Disney began preparing their version of Bambi, Germany annexed Austria and stripped Salten of his citizenship. He fled to Switzerland, where he saw Disney's Bambi in 1942. Salten didn't make any money off the film, but he didn't seem to resent Disney for it. When someone asked him what he thought of the movie, he replied, "It was a very fine film, and I liked it." Although it wasn't an immediate hit, Disney's movie would become much more famous than Salten's book. Salten died in 1945, just a few months after the Allies liberated the concentration camps and forced the Nazis to surrender. So, if Bambi was an anti-Nazi story, did Disney ruin it by making it cute? Well, according to Jack Zipes, the answer is definitely yes. In fact, he said Disney mutilated the novel and made it into a pathetic, almost stupid film about a prince and a bourgeois family. That's one way to look at it. Still, while you can't deny that Disney erased any anti-Nazi messages in Bambi, their movie may have also preserved Bambi, and in a way, its message. Who knows how many people would still be reading Salten's book if Disney hadn't kept the character relevant in pop culture? How many people are still discovering the book today because they saw the movie as a kid? Disney's Bambi isn't exactly an icon of resistance, but if he leads people to discover Felix Salten's work, maybe the story isn't mutilated after all. Salten's novel ends with an adult Bambi finding the dreaded hunter lying dead on the forest floor, shot by some other man. It's a grim scene, but it might be part of Salten's message. The persecuted deer outlives his persecutor, just as the persecuted minorities of Europe outlasted the Nazi regime. It's as if Salten's telling us that no matter how much damage they do, the persecutors will lose in the end. The people, ideas, and even the books they attack will outlive the small-minded monsters who tried to destroy them. But who knows? Bambi might just be a book about a deer. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this theory of Bambi being an anti-Nazi allegory. Do you think that message is in the story? And if so, do you think Disney did more harm or more good by adapting it? If you like this video, there are plenty more on the channel to check out. Please like and subscribe so you see all our new videos. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.